Vanessa the Vivacious. How are you?
I'm doing good. How about yourself?
I'm doing all right. Thank you. Glad to have you on. You've got an extensive background in media and looking forward to covering that.
Thank you. When I hear extensive to myself, I'm like, it's just life. But to other
Right.
people, it's something else entirely. And I really enjoy seeing the world through other people's eyes and hearing about things I've done. So yeah, let's go for it.
Cool, cool. Let me give an introduction here for you, for the audience, so they get a little bit of understanding who you are before we dive into the conversation. You are a podcaster, a filmmaker, video journalist, musician, founder of Vanessa the Vivacious Productions, which is a female owned Latina-led creative production company. And you're the creator of the series and podcast Humanity 2.0, former managing director and contributing video journalist with Are You Happy, a platform with 4 million followers, and you've traveled coast to coast across America, interviewing thousands of people about happiness while overseeing a network of 3,000 contributing video journalists. You're a storyteller with over 4 years of deep human centered storytelling. You've cultivated a rare and lived understanding of humanity, bringing expertise across documentary filmmaking, content strategy, talent scouting, nonprofit leadership, music performance, and creative consulting, all rooted in your philosophy of be vivacious. And you're an amplifier. At the heart of everything you do is one mission: to amplify voices, honor lived experiences, and create work that feels as human as it is powerful. That's what I was saying. You have an extensive background.
Well, thank you. And I'm thankful for every single minute of it. It's unconventional. I really enjoy that I didn't prescribe to one particular path, and yeah, I wouldn't change any of it, even though I burnt out at one point.
I get it. I totally get it. That's interviewing that many people and listening to that many stories can be a bit taxing because everybody's different. So you're getting multiple perspectives, multiple ideas, multiple angles.
Yeah, and I was telling someone on another podcast that when I interview people, I tend to absorb their energy. And that is what
Yeah.
makes me good at what I do, is that I'm able to tap into them and, really feel what it is that they're saying and what they're going through, and then develop these very thoughtful follow-up questions or deep follow-up questions that no one would have thought to ask because I'm, very much in tune with that person. So that can take a lot of energy, and doing multiple interviews a day, I quickly learned that I had to scale down and make sure that I was okay too, in addition to, paying attention to people. I
Yeah.
think as podcast host, we tend to think, oh, if I'm doing a lot of episodes, then I'm doing really well, when really the quality is what matters and the message is what matters. And if you are sacrificing that quality, or maybe you're rushing to learn about someone, or you're forgetting about what it is that they said, then that's not serving anyone. So yeah, I believe in quality for sure over quantity.
Yeah, absolutely. I completely agree with you and can resonate fully. As an empath, I'm the exact same way. Exact same way. So let's start off with my only scripted question that I ever ask. And that is, where were you born and what was life like as a kid for Vanessa?
Huh. That's a very interesting question to have as your only scripted one. I was born in San Antonio, Texas, so I'm a Texan through and through, but I enjoyed leaving every chance I got. Life growing up there was very simple, but mostly because we had nothing. You hear of people saying, I grew up on dirt poor. Well, I grew up dirt poor with dirt floors. So at certain points, we had houses that the windows wouldn't open. And in Texas summer heat, oof, that's an
Oh,
oven.
wow.
So moving places and not understanding that we're moving houses because, my mom couldn't pay the rent and we're on housing. And so we're having to go wherever, the government sends you, and, having Christmas in hefty bags and not knowing that it's not normal for Santa to deliver presents in hefty bags, just
Yeah.
all kinds of things like that kind of jump out when I think of growing up. And but then I think of the empowerment that comes with having to struggle early on, and how I developed a lot of skills such as, being able to take care of myself and raise myself and become an adult very young, but ultimately it shaped who I am, and how resilient I was able to become, especially with far more adversity down the road. So I really I really look back and I'm thankful for everything and every part of it, because it shapes who you are and who you become.
Yeah, for sure. Did you have siblings?
Yeah, I have four brothers and one sister. And yeah, everyone is so vastly different. You have some that work in HVAC. You have one that works for themselves making mugs, and then you have my sister. She works for IHOP as an admin, so she works on the office side, and she has a family. Everyone in my family has kids,
Okay.
biological children. I have an adopted child, but everyone has biological children. So it's been really interesting to be that aunt and then eventually have my own through marriage. But yeah, there's a lot of us. We have like 12, I think it's like my mother had 15 siblings. So there's a lot of cousins out there. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm working on a documentary about finding my family's tribe, the native tribe, and then finding my father, because I don't know that side. And
Okay.
one of the things I uncovered right away was that my mother had 15 and not 12 siblings. So just learning all kinds of crazy things.
Wow. Yeah, I understand what that's like. My dad had 11
Mm,
siblings, so I know what a big family's like as well.
yeah, it's great. I mean, the cookouts and growing up with all of those kids around, like there's nothing like it.
Yeah. Where did you fall in the order of your siblings?
I'm the baby. I am the
Okay.
baby, and you always hear that story that the baby got everything and the baby no. I did. I got nothing. I was not
Right.
spoiled. I was working at the age of 13, so no, I got nothing.
And the oldest one, how much difference in age is there?
Oh, probably at least I would say maybe like 15 years or so.
Oh, wow. Okay.
Yeah, yeah, very much older. We I think like the youngest of the boys and then my sister, we're closest in age. We're like a few years apart, but the other ones are very far apart. And so we grew up mostly with, the three of us as opposed to everyone. So the oldest, he actually passed away during COVID. And so when I'm asked, like, how many siblings do you have? Sometimes I'm conflicted. Like, do you include those that are gone, or do you include, it's an odd question, an odd thought to have, but
Yeah,
I still count him.
for sure. Yeah, I get it. I get it. I totally get it. That what and from my perspective too, I've got an older sister that's a half sister. She was from my dad's first marriage. So I understand that concept of trying to relate and discern how to represent them.
Mm,
And for me, I've always just said she's my sister. I've always had this closeness to her, even though she had a different mom. But
yeah.
I had so much relatability to her throughout the years. And also,
Mm,
too, it was a scenario where she lived in Tennessee, where all our family's from. And so I would only get to see her when we would go down south on vacations or holidays and stuff. So that just made it that much more special for me to be able to connect with her at that point in time growing up.
yeah, it's funny how you're not the only person that says like my step sibling is still a sibling. I've heard that countless times, and even my siblings, technically they're all step siblings, but we've never ever had that division or that line.
Yeah,
And
yeah,
then it makes you think about just the concept of family and how there are so many different forms of family, but at the root of it, family is family. And
yeah,
you have that connection, and that's all that exists.
yeah. What type of work did your mom do as you were growing up?
So initially she was a homemaker, and then I don't know what struck it for her, but something, thank God, told her you need to go to school. And she went to nursing school at
Oh, wow.
night. She would leave us in the daytime to fend for ourselves. and she'd go to school, and then she became a nurse at a retirement community. So she worked extremely hard to be able to take care of us, and that was how she did it.
Very cool. Did you have any connection to your grandparents at all growing up?
Our grandmother, we had a brief connection with her for a portion of our childhood. She did not speak English,
Okay.
and we were not completely fluent in Spanish. So we communicated by, gestures like, "Are you hungry? Are
Right.
you sad?" But what I remember most is just how loving she was. And I was very little at the time, so I used to take naps with her. And when it was storming outside and I was scared, she would always, hold me close, and I felt very safe. So I remember that about her, and then just
Okay.
all of like the cooking. But to my knowledge, my mother had a similar experience with her mother where she didn't really have her and have that closeness with her. But then later on, when she grew up, she understood her more and they got along better. And that's exactly what happened with me and my mother as well.
Oh, wow.
Mm.
Wow. How about elementary school? Were you one of the kids that wanted to sit towards the back of the class or towards the front so that you could answer questions better and maybe get called down quicker?
I was definitely a front of the class kid, but mainly because I couldn't see the board. So,
Okay.
so I needed glasses so bad, but we couldn't afford them. So I had to sit at the front. And I was always afraid of getting called on for math questions because I was terrible at math and I was great at reading and writing. And I wrote children's stories when I was a little kid for my
Oh, wow.
classmates. So my teacher would put them on display like a little library. And that was like one of my first, experiences of being a writer. And so I loved school, but I just hated math.
Was that writing a way for you to start creating your own world outside of what you were experiencing in real
You,
life?
I would say yes, but also music was. Music has always been an escape for me. And then even as an adult, it provides a relief of stress and a disconnect from everything that I could not even do with meditation. It's just
Yeah.
maybe it is a form of meditation, but yeah, music and then writing stories and just I don't know. I used to write stories about little kids that would come across ordinary objects that turn into other personalities, and like maybe they were alone and then they weren't alone because they have these adventures. And it is very interesting to think about what I was writing and not really understanding what I was writing about, but then now to think back on it, I've never done that. So
If I remember correctly from our conversation on your podcast, you're a classically trained
yes,
musician.
yes,
What instrument did you study?
I studied flute since I was 13, and then I self-taught myself piano at about, I want to say 16. So I've been playing flute and piano for many years. And then I picked up guitar along the way, but not completely, just kind of, noodling around. So I enjoy playing flute and piano to this very day.
Got you. Okay. Okay. Do you remember as a kid if you loved being outside in the outdoors more than potentially being in school?
I enjoyed both.
Okay.
Um, I did enjoy being outside because I could listen to music on my Walkman and I would sing to the grass. And I
All
would
right.
pretend that the grass was little people. And so I'd hold these concerts for the grass.
Oh,
That
wow.
was, yeah, I loved doing that. So that was my thing to do for many years. Yeah.
That's fascinating to me.
Yeah, I wanted to form a band, and I think I started to in my early 20s, but then my co-band person passed away from a blood cancer, so it kind of
Mm,
didn't really develop after that. And then of course life happens and you go down all these paths, but eventually I'd like to go back to that and to actually forming an alternative band. That would be really cool. I
yeah.
have a client who's a blues musician and she's amazing, so that's great. But I think that eventually I'll find my way there, but I'll never get past that image of singing to the grass and just really enjoying that.
Yeah. You mentioned that you were working on some family history
Mhm.
uh, and trying to tap into your native. roots side. Do you have any inclination of what and where that ties in at all?
So finding the exact tribe is a little difficult, but I do know that it's going to be within like the South and Central Mexico
Okay.
region. I've been working with a genealogist and then I also did some tests before that. And that's primarily where it points. It points to that area of Mexico and then throughout the United States, you see it around like the West Coast and Texas, Arizona, New Mexico, like there's, the general areas
Yep.
and of course, you have little flicks in other countries, but I don't feel like I will like actually successfully find my father through this. I really don't think that'll happen. If it does, that'll be amazing. Or
Okay.
even any kind of like siblings that I didn't know about. But the native tribe part, I think that'll definitely be more solidified for sure. So I look forward to doing both journeys, but growing up without a father, I remember always rationalizing it by saying, you can't miss something you never had. And
Mm,
then as an adult, recognizing that that's not necessarily true.
no, for sure. Yeah, that's an interesting perspective to take as a coping mechanism.
Yes, exactly. That's
Yeah,
exactly what I did. Exactly. And if you believe something hard enough, then it becomes the truth for a really long time until it's not working anymore.
for sure. I find it very fascinating because there's Native American in my background as well. With our family being from East Tennessee, we're close to the Smoky Mountains right there, so that's Eastern Cherokee territory. And the thing that I found fascinating about your story so far is the fact that you were having concerts with the grass, which falls right in line with that native mentality and connection with everything around us, especially the earth. And the fact that you were communicating and entertaining the grass, I think that's very, very profound as a kid. Very cool. If we're moving closer towards the end of middle school, had you at that time found a group of friends that you were close to, or were you more comfortable being alone and off to yourself at that
I
point in time?
think I had friends, but they were not really those core friends. I think I had people that I talked to and filled time with, but I was very much alone. I spent a lot of time, I guess, making movies in my mind and listening to music and watching, visuals. And I was very internal and I wrote a lot and stuck to myself a lot. I didn't go with my siblings or go out with friends. I stayed in a lot. And so
Okay.
when I'd go to school and I'd interact with other band kids or at times other bad kids getting into trouble, and we all have that phase of life. It really wasn't core friends. It was mostly, people that you just connected with for like a series of moments and then you just went your way. I think that it took a long time to even find like a core group of friends that I really connected with. And even then, I still wasn't truly connected. So it wouldn't be until like much later in life that I understood what those connections really meant and what relationships with people that are close to you really are. So
Yeah. How about shifting into middle school? Did you have to change schools going into middle school, or was it kind of a school that had all of that together?
I went to two different schools. I had an unfortunate incident with getting into trouble in my second year, I believe it was. And I think it was, me trying to figure out who I was and what I was doing. And I kind of got into a bad crowd and they decided to, vandalize property at school one day. And I said, okay. So I did
Okay.
this and I got caught and I got sent to an alternative school for, kids that are not good. And I spent maybe like 3 months there before going back to the other school. But the
Okay.
experience, even in an alternative environment where you have teachers trying to teach kids that don't care about education or kids that they want to try and be better. And it was interesting to watch and be part of that environment, knowing I was like this, little smart kid, but maybe I was too smart because I was getting in trouble. Yeah, I went to two different schools.
In that environment, did you find yourself recognizing that may have not have been the path that you wanted to stay on?
Yeah, definitely. And I think that going back to music, my band director, when they found out that I was moving to this alternative school, they were pretty upset,
Okay.
and they decided to still keep in contact with me, and they would provide music for me to practice and work on. And so I think music again just saved me and kept me, grounded. But
Yeah.
even amongst these bad kids, I knew that that wasn't me. I knew that I could be like them and I could move into that kind of world. But at the heart of it, that just not is it wasn't who I was.
Right. That's excellent that the band directors were recognized your abilities
Mm.
and wanted to stay connected with you to make sure that you continued to hone those skills uh,
Yeah.
moving
Well,
forward.
part of it was like my siblings were also musicians. So my sister, my brother, the latest
Other
brother,
ones.
youngest
Yeah.
brother. Yeah, so they're both musicians. My sister played the flute as well, and she was super good. And so the conductors remembered me because of her, and then my brother was very good as well. And like they wanted to, just support the best they can. But I was different in the sense that I got in trouble in the middle of that period. So they wanted to make sure that I stayed grounded in music. And thank God that they did, because if they didn't, then, who knows where I would be after that. But once I got back to the middle school, it was as though I'd never left. And they just, kept feeding me music, and I kept going and pushing, and music became everything. It became what saved me from myself, I guess.
Yeah. That's great, especially being able to transition back and have that still same stay fluid and it not be a huge contrast of, being gone for a while and then getting back into it,
Hmm.
which for most kids, or maybe not most, but a lot of kids, that's a difficult transition, being gone and then having to come back in and trying to fit in again.
And I remember coming back and other kids thinking I was a bad kid because I went to a bad school. So they automatically thought that I was this, rebel kid. And
Yeah,
it's like, no, no. I just was in the wrong place at the wrong time doing the wrong thing. And
right.
oh man, it was very funny. But I think back on that period and just how, as kids you're usually isolated or feeling depressed in some way because you can't even begin to process your feelings at the time. So it makes
Yeah,
sense that a lot of kids are depressed or, questioning things. And I think music is a lifesaver in that regard because I put everything I had into it, and it really just changed everything for me to where I wasn't focused on how sad I was. I was focused on, what note comes next.
yeah, that's interesting. What note comes next? That's a great metaphor for life. What is the next note? The teachers that you had, the band teachers were already recognizing that you had some gifts. Were there any other teachers that you remember fondly of during that time?
Yeah, my English teachers. I've always been a writer. I've always tapped into just like that emotional side and been able to offer perspectives that were different than my classmates. And so I always had English teachers that were very much involved and very supportive of me writing anything and everything. And reading, of course, is important.
Yeah, very cool. English teachers. Another interesting aspect based on the limited ability to communicate with your grandmother and that English was something that you were drawn to, writing, literature, that type of stuff. That's very cool. As you're transitioning from middle school into high school, are you apprehensive at that point, or is it a little bit of an excitement taking place because it's going to be a completely different environment, so to speak, because it's going to be larger, uh, broader range of students?
Yeah, I was definitely excited. I was excited because at that point the music goes from being, in a room full of people to being on a field marching, marching bands and symphonic bands. And then I was very competitive with my sister and my brother, and so I wanted to do everything my sister did, but better. And so
Okay.
I practiced 4 hours a day, and I'd practice 2 hours, and then I'd put my hands in the freezer, and then I'd go back and play for two more. So I was just very hardcore about practicing. And I did everything I set out to do. I was, first chair for many years. And I think I also obtained a band scholarship that only one person will get. And so I did everything I sought out to do. But yeah, I loved it. High school it was really great musically. And then I was a joiner at that point. I wanted to be in all the organizations that I could. So I did like National Honor Society, and I did like all the extracurriculars like ROTC, because my siblings did it. That was also primary drive, was because my siblings did it. But
Yeah.
with the that competitive spirit, we always wanted to be better, and so it made us, into really successful individuals in that sense.
ROTC. That's something out of left field.
Yeah.
How did that hit your radar?
Oh, well, my sister and my brother did it, and they made it look so cool. And I don't know why it was cool. Maybe it was the uniforms, but I also liked the structure, the confidence. I mean, it's so different from like the actual military, where they just focus on those core values of having integrity and
Yeah.
doing what you say you're going to do when you do it, that kind of thing, showing up
Right.
for other people and the team mindset. All of the
Yeah.
good parts are what the ROTCs and high schools are. And then, of course, you have like competitions, and those, create that healthy team mentality. But yeah, it came from watching my siblings. I mean, they were super influential for a great amount of time. And I've never put that together. But yeah, I did a lot of things because they did it first.
Wow, that's fascinating. Did either one of those go off into the military at all?
They did not. My sister, she actually left high school before she graduated, and then my brother, he wanted to, but for some reason he did not go. I think maybe his scores were not good enough or something. I'm not entirely sure, but he actually ended up having a baby. So
Okay.
yeah, I
Gotcha.
think that probably changed things for him.
Life circumstances changes
Right.
the direction.
I actually was planning to go into the Air Force because I wanted to join the Air Force band, and they send
Okay.
you to conservatories in other countries and you play all over the world. But then, like I was talking about practicing so hard, I hurt my hands.
Oh,
And
wow.
I just knew one day when I wasn't hitting things quite as quickly, but my brain was there, but my fingers weren't there. I just knew at that point that I wasn't going further than high school. And that,
Mm.
like, oh, it broke my heart. And then that's where I found film. That's where I found, the visual arts.
Were you able to take classes in high school within those two fields?
For film,
Yeah.
yes, yeah, I took my first film class, and that changed everything.
What grade level was that you took your first?
I was a senior.
Senior. Okay.
Mhm.
And what was the thing that you realized once you started working with that switched on a different
Mhm.
creative
Well,
uh,
I
switch?
realized that what I'd been doing my entire life, with closing my eyes and listening to music and seeing images and
Yeah.
understanding that those are films, and that I was in an environment where other people thought the same and visualized similarly, that
Yeah.
was amazing to me. And then seeing how people also connected with films. From a young age, I would go to the movie theater and I'd watch movies. And then
Okay.
I'd go to the cafe next door and I'd sit down and I'd analyze everything I just saw, the stories, the characters. And I'm 13, to 18 doing this. And I met other people who did the same thing, who analyzed movies and broke down the storylines and tried to understand, why did they do this, or why is this placed there? Why are these colors used? And I understood very quickly that I wasn't alone. And at that point, that's where I was like, okay, these are my people.
Right.
This is where I belong. And I remember having a final project, and you could make anything you wanted to. And I wanted to interview people. And
Yeah.
so I interviewed some people, and I turned it in a little bit late, but the teacher was very supportive of it. And that made me very proud.
Very cool. Yeah, that's an interesting direction to go in. Watching films and then analyzing them afterward. And
Mhm.
you're finding a group of other people who are doing the same thing. at that age, that's fascinating that you were able to connect with those types of people because you would most of the time you think about film critics and stuff like that. They've gone to college and been in the industry for a while and all that stuff, and yet you picked up on doing that in your teenage years and started just doing it on your own, whereas they're doing it, as a job. You're just doing it as kind of recollection and, all right,
Yeah.
how did it tie together? Why did it look like this? What was the storyline? All of those
Yeah. It was second nature. And it's funny because everything I've done has always been out of, just talent or habit or natural, completely natural. I've gone to school, yes, for a series of years in various terms, and I didn't even complete my degree. But just yeah, everything I've done has always been an innate ability that other people go to school for, and I just have always been this way, inclined naturally my whole life.
Yeah. That was gonna be my next question. As you're ending high school, are you starting to think about going off to college or community college or anything to continue studying that or at least studying the music even?
Yes. So I wanted to apply like everyone does to USC Film School because it's the golden star, everyone
Okay.
everyone knows that. And I apply and I get waitlisted and I had done pretty well in high school, so I can apply just about anywhere. And I should have gone to an in-state school because then school would have been free. And I didn't do that because I was a rebel and I wanted to get out of
Yeah.
Texas. And I end up well, okay, let me go back a little bit. Before I even applied to school, I wasn't going to go to college because I had no aspiration. And I met someone who actually pushed me, like a high school boyfriend that pushed me to actually even think about college. And so
Okay.
initially I didn't want to. I thought I was going to end up like my mother or other family members with kids and a family, and that was it. But
Mm.
when I did finally, see that there was this whole other world where you could grow and become something, and yeah, I ended up applying to TCU and I went to TCU for a year, technically 2 years, but I ran out of money.
Okay.
And even though I had grants, scholarships, and loans, it wasn't enough.
Yeah.
And so I had to go home. And I'm a first generation college student. So to fail, it was the worst thing in the whole world. It was, I had worked so hard to get to where I was, and I failed and I had to go home, and it was the worst feeling in the whole world.
Yeah. I get it. Totally get it. I attempted to go off to college as well. Went to Pensacola in Florida to study graphic design and having to work and study and keep up with everything. It was just too much. And I eventually dropped out after 5 semesters. And the main reason, literally, was because I was failing everything but my art classes, me having to pay for it. There was no way I was going to spend more money to take the exact same class all over again and potentially fail. So I just ultimately dropped out and started doing creative stuff on my own.
Yeah.
You mentioned earlier that you had started work at 13. What were some of the types of jobs that you had moving through high school?
Yeah. So when I was 13, I worked behind the bar at a Christian rock venue.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. People often ask, like, how could you work behind a bar? Well, it's simple.
Because
It
you're
was
not serving
Christian.
alcohol.
Exactly.
Exactly.
We were serving Fritos and hot dogs and Cokes, but
Yeah.
to punks with the biggest Liberty spikes. This was a very hardcore music type of environment. It was like Christian metal and punk and rock, and it was the best time. Like, you would not believe the kind of music that comes out of these kids, and it was a place where youth could go and listen to music, but also, be safe in an environment where, they can love God, or they can, worship with other kids. But then you also have these, like, amazing Christian artists that are just like screaming at the top of their lungs because they're that kind of hard metal. So it was a
Yeah.
very interesting environment, but a lot of kids, came off the street and were safe on the weekends because of that place. And the owner, he passed away years back, but his daughter is now working to revive this
Oh,
venue, which
cool.
is huge. So I worked there from 13 to 15. And
Okay.
then that was under the table, of course, because it's illegal to
Yeah.
work. But that family saw that I was in need and they saw that I had nothing. And so they would, allow me to work and give me, cash so I could go and buy what I needed to
Right.
get by.
Yeah.
It really saved me. And the mom, she ended up being like a secondary mom that I really needed. And then I became a waitress after that legally. When I was
Okay.
15, I became a waitress and I waitressed all the way through high school nonstop. And that's how I earned the money to get out of town and get on a bus to get to Fort Worth for college.
Yeah. Once you realized that you weren't going to be able to continue with college and study, and that you were going to have to figure out some other way to do that, and also too being in a position where at that point you're an adult and you've got to make ends meet as well. What was it at that point in time that was in your head of what you wanted to do, or what did you step into?
When I went home, I thought about what was truly important. And to me, what's always been important is serving humanity and doing something that helps other people.
Okay.
It's just been ingrained in me since I was a little kid, and thank God I've never lost it. So I ended up finding a way to help people, which was AmeriCorps. AmeriCorps is like domestic Peace Corps where you serve in anywhere around the country with a nonprofit. And I served with a group called City Year in Seattle for a few years and then came back home to Texas. Even during that period, though, it was difficult because I lost my job and I became homeless in Seattle,
Mm,
so far from home.
right.
And so uh, it took me over I just 2 years to get back to Texas. And when I did, I spent years doing retail and insurance and all these like standard jobs that you would have. And what kept me from going back to school, eventually I did, but what kept me from going back was that TCU held on to my transcript. And I couldn't
Okay.
attend any other school as a transfer student because they held on to it. And I had to pay them a certain amount of money in order to get it back.
Oh,
And
wow.
yeah, it took like some various circumstances in life happening to afford to pay back this university that's, to me, I feel like they stole 15 years of my life basically because I could
Yeah.
have been way further beyond
Right.
and more successful and I wouldn't have experienced homelessness and all the terrible things that happened that after that. When I did go back to school, I did so well. I went to a junior college, to Dallas College, and I realized that, it wasn't about the prestigiousness of the university that you attend. You're really just buying a name at that point. But the educators in a junior college environment, they care so much more because they don't get paid hardly anything. They're there because of the kids and they want to
Right.
change lives. And they really did. Like I was so supported and instructed very well that I was able to start my company, I think, in my first semester, maybe my second, but my first year of school, I started my own company because I just felt that confident to do so.
Okay. Going from Texas to Seattle, that's a huge jump in environment, huge jump in climate,
Hmm.
comparatively between the two. A lot more rain,
Yep.
in Seattle compared to Texas. What was that change like for you? Was
It
it
was
drastic?
in the best way. Yes,
Okay.
in the best way. I loved it. The only thing I missed about Texas was the food. That's it. Because in San
Okay.
Antonio, the food is amazing.
Right.
But and the family, miss them too sometimes. But yeah, no, the Northwest is its own globe. I feel like its own world. You have the greenery and the fresh air, and salmon is so cheap because it comes straight from the water, right
Yeah.
next door. And so I ate so much salmon that when I came back, I couldn't eat salmon for like a year. But it was the best. The parks, I lost so much weight walking around and you didn't need a car for anything unless you were going, far out. And
Hmm.
the mass transit was wonderful. This was like 2005, 2004, 2005. So it was
Right.
like a really good period for living there and I enjoyed every minute of it. I would move back, but I probably would move somewhere like not in the city just because like the nature is just amazing.
Did you find any creative opportunities while you were there?
Yeah, I worked with a senator who was running for Senate, and they needed someone to do like graphic design and help out with events. And so I
Okay.
ended up helping them out for a little while. And for the most part, I was working with a nonprofit where we helped out high school kids to help them in their studies and show them, volunteerism in the community. So I did a great deal of that. But yeah, with the senator, I had a good amount of creative experience there, but not as much as I would have liked.
Yeah, gotcha. How about the music scene? Because Seattle's music scene from the late 90s into the early 2000s was huge.
Mhm.
And it in 2005, was it still holding on to a little bit of that you were able to see and experience, or was it starting to change quite a bit?
I think it was still prevalent because you have a lot of really great artists that come through there.
Mm,
So Seattle and even like with Texas, North Texas, you get a lot of the good ones. Like there are certain areas and regions of the country where you always get the good ones, right?
yeah,
And so at that point, I remember seeing Muse in Seattle, and it was like the most amazing show. And it was a small venue,
yeah,
and there were so many cool artists coming through there all the time. So I think like the indie scene was really, really heavy at
yeah.
that period. And then of course, you had lots of local talent. Everyone was wanting to be Eddie Vedder.
Right,
So you had a lot of local talent for sure. So it was good.
right on. As you mentioned, at one point you became homeless in
Mhm.
Seattle. Was that situation the thing that caused you to decide to go back to Texas, or were you in that environment and experiencing that for a while in Seattle?
Yeah, so I was in that environment, like I said, because I had lost my job and the job was tied to the housing. And I got a hold of public services and I learned how to navigate that to where I could find a place to stay comfortably and then go do my laundry somewhere, go get food at the food bank. And so I learned how to navigate that. And one
Okay.
thing I'm really proud of is that I never panhandled and I never did anything illegal, which
Okay.
is great.
Yeah,
I,
yeah,
I pride myself on that. But I also understand what it's like to experience both sides, right?
yeah,
Where when you're a person that's has a job and a home and you walk past a homeless person and you're like, oh my goodness, right? And then
yeah,
when you are that person and you're like watching someone walk by you, knowing that they're judging you upon looking at you and they don't even know you. There's this one experience that comes to mind all the time for me where I was volunteering at a soup kitchen with this group and I was serving these people who were homeless, right? And
mm,
then the next week, literally being on the other side of that line and receiving food from the same people that I volunteered with.
wow,
Yeah.
that's amazing. That's
Yeah.
amazing.
Yeah. It's like something that I'll never forget. And I'll never forget what it's like to be seen as like exactly what you are from, based upon what you look like and what they think is going on. So my ex-husband pointed it out many years ago and he said I don't understand how you can still be so positive and such a champion for humanity when you've experienced the worst of it.
Mm,
and I mean he's not wrong, but at the core it's just part of who I am. I remember being a little girl in Mexico with my family, visiting family in Mexico,
hmm,
and giving all of my money, everything I had, to somebody who was homeless, not even knowing what homelessness was, but just
yeah,
giving it to this person on the street because I felt so bad for them and I thought that would help. And that's never left me. Like that's something that I can't even, completely describe. But yeah, it stayed with me my whole life. And if I had to sum up my whole life in one, memory, that's it. Is that.
yeah. It's interesting. I'm seeing that you have a servant's heart from your story so far. It, from all the way back to giving concerts to the grass, uh, being a servant at that point in time as a little girl. And also, too, there's an element of, and I don't even know if you recognize this or not, but I'm recognizing it, is that native culture of community, of looking out for others who are around who may not be as capable as we are, but always considering that and making sure that you're looking out and at least recognizing where they're at and
Mhm.
giving some sort of support in some way.
Yeah. Yeah, and I've never thought of that. I do know for sure, like I've always known that I've had a servant's heart for sure. And I always tell people like, my core values are always service to others, and
Yeah.
it's in everything that I do. But yeah, I've never thought of that side of it of being like more communal and protective. Like that's always been very inherent as well. With my ex-husband, I raised his son who wasn't my own child, but I raised them like mine. And then I
Yeah.
always say I raised my ex-husband too. So
Yeah. Sometimes that is the case.
yeah, but it was natural. I mean, it still is, to
Yeah.
take care of people and make sure that they're okay. That is totally instinctual.
Yeah. I get it. Totally get it. All right. As you get back to Texas, and you're back in school and you're starting to take some more classes to at least try and move yourself forward a little bit. How does that environment again start to impact the way that you're looking about moving forward?
Before I even went to school, there's I want to say there's like, like a good 15-year period because I got back from Seattle in 2007.
Okay.
And then I did retail and insurance and all these various jobs until 2020 when I went back to school. So it was a long, long time before I went back.
Yeah.
But when I did go back, it felt like it was a chance to kind of like reinvent and do what I really wanted as opposed to what was expected. So I didn't look at it as me bettering myself. I looked at it as me figuring out who I was and what I was meant to do.
Okay.
So I kind of went at it that way. Because before that, I was just surviving and paying
Yeah.
the bills for many years. And then I was wondering why I was quitting jobs. Every time I got bored, I quit, and I
Yeah.
went and did something else. And, with kids, when they're in school and they're bored, it's usually because they're just really smart, but they're not challenged enough. And then so
Yeah.
as an adult, when you're not challenged in your work or even appreciated for the work that you do, then you tend to tune out and then you quit or you become disengaged and you quiet quit, right? So,
Yeah.
so yeah, that life was very much, a rotation of jobs for a good amount of time before I even went back to school. But yeah, I was so scared to go back because at that point I was 40 by then. So, when you go into school as a 20-year-old or an 18-year-old, you're where you're supposed to be in life. That's what you're supposed to be doing. But
Yeah.
then when you go to school as an adult, you're surrounded by kids. And so you're so scared about, will you even know what to do? Do you remember how
Right.
to hold a pen or a pencil? Does anyone use pens and pencils anymore?
Yeah.
And but then the first class I took, I realized quickly that I had so much life experience on these kids that I could do anything, and I did. I just led with that vivaciousness that I've always had, and I just went forth and conquered. And I think what's contributed to all the good things I've done was that I've never really asked permission. I just do it.
Yeah. I think that's a perfect scenario to remind the audience from a creative standpoint. If you have that inside of you and you need to explore and experience that just because of internally that's who you are, just do it. Like, don't look for permission to do it. Just start doing it. Just go for it. It's
I,
uh, it's a very powerful trait to have that ability because it's individualized, number one. Number two, it's an empowerment scenario for you as the creative. And then also too, it's a curiosity that's there. As creatives, we're always looking for the next thing, or we need to figure something out a little more than what we know at a certain point in time and experience it. Even like you as a young kid, writing those stories and, even going to the movies and then sitting down afterwards and writing about the movie that you just saw. What was the storyline? What was the direction that it was going in? What were the characters doing? All of those types of things of being curious is a thing that I think a lot of creatives, for multiple reasons, have the tendency to stop allowing it to bubble up to the surface many
Mm-hmm.
times. And a lot of that's due to life circumstances, I understand. But if you can tap back into that at any point in time and move forward with just the curiosity of that creative spark, I think it will do many things to change where you're at and your perspective on stuff.
Yeah. And I would also add that regardless of your age, you're not done. You're not done until you're dead, basically. I mean, you
Yeah.
could reinvent yourself at 50, at 60. I mean, there are people who've done that.
Yep.
And you can chase whatever it is that you're passionate about at whatever age you are. It doesn't matter. I think that one of the greatest things that I could ever have done is just never subscribing to a formula or a process,
Yeah.
ignoring them completely. And I don't
Yeah.
know if that's, hubris or what, but I just never cared about the order of things and how you're supposed to do them. I feel like it's about your passion and what you feel in your gut.
Yeah.
And that's what I use when I think about stories or I interview people. I go with the gut and the intuition. But yeah, I highly encourage anyone that it if they feel like it's too late, it's not. It never is. Not until you're dead.
Yeah, for sure. For sure. I know I've reinvented myself plenty of times over the years, which for me, not having that education background, but knowing that I could draw
Hmm.
everything that I wanted to see, or I could figure out and reverse engineer just about everything that I was looking at or working with, has allowed me to, work across multiple industries, whether it was music and entertainment, whether it was fashion, whether it was jewelry, fine art, graphic design and branding, all of those things. It
Yeah.
was just sheer desire to do it. That's all that it was. That was the only thing that allowed me to step into it. I just wanted to do it, so I did it. Uh,
Yeah.
and a lot of, especially with the jewelry, I had no idea what the jewelry industry was like when I stepped into it. All I knew is I could draw what I wanted to see in a three-dimensional form
Hmm.
made out of the metals, the precious metals, and started working with a manufacturing company who was going to be producing it. Realized, okay, everything in this process revolves on measurements and
Hmm.
thickness, and everything that's done within that industry is based on millimeters. So it's not inches, not centimeters, and I had never worked with millimeters before, so I had to figure that out. Figure out, okay, if it's 5 millimeters, what is the relational scale to an inch, right? So
Yeah.
again, you're reverse engineering things so that you can grasp what that looks like. And then also too with that scenario, I was already doing my own branding from the product line I was developing. And that manufacturing company that I was working with, they saw what I was creating for myself, and they hadn't done anything to rebrand themselves or freshen up the look of their company in over a decade. And so they asked me, they're like, "Hey, could you help us redo what we've got going on here?" And so I just started helping them rebrand themselves, started helping them with their promotional materials for their trade shows, which in turn just allowed me to understand, okay, here are the different trade shows that jewelry designers go to, jewelry
Hmm.
companies go to. A little bit different from what the fashion industry was putting forth as trade shows, but still the same concept. So it just allowed me to move forward seamlessly through it because I already knew what one industry did. Now I'm just stepping into another industry with the same skill set and everything that I've learned prior, just
Hmm.
applying it in a different way. And I think many creatives can if they're able to look at what they're doing from those types of perspective, then they shouldn't be afraid to do anything moving forward. They can
Hmm.
just pick a different industry, step into it, and just apply what they know.
Yeah. And even like you mentioned, reinventing yourself, that's not a bad thing. You know,
Now,
it's a chance to do something new and go on a whole other adventure. And you really do learn a lot about yourself and what you're capable of and what how limitless things are. So
yeah,
it's I think everyone should reinvent themselves a few times.
yeah. As you're back into the school environment, about how long does it take you to get to the point of either finishing or get to the point of realizing maybe I'm not going to be able to continue forward with it?
Technically, to this day, I'm like 3 classes short of a degree, but
Okay.
I've been so busy. When I first started going to school, like I said, I had started my company in my first year, and then I landed a client that took me on a journey for 4 years, which is the Are You Happy series. And
Okay.
so I was traveling the country, teaching, hiring, doing all of those things for 4 years. And so my degree just kind of sat on the back burner. And I remember telling my professors, like, look, I'm going on the road and I'm really sorry that I can't finish this class. And they said, don't apologize for what we taught you how to do. This is what we taught you to do. So come finish it when you're ready if you need to, but honestly, you really don't. So
Right.
it's more of a completion thing for me, for my kid, so that one day he'll take a look at, the fact that life happened and then it interrupted my plan and then it happened repeatedly. And then no matter what, I kept trying to complete said plan. And then,
Yeah.
eventually I was able to complete it. But really, all of the life experience that happens in between, that is the real education.
Exactly. Once you start working with the Are You Happy program, what does that look like in terms of an introduction to them and then starting to work with them and then realizing, okay, they're going to send me across the country?
So I had saw a video on social media,
Okay.
and the video was such a profound interview of someone asking the basic question, are you happy? And then the response being so moving. And then at the end, there's a call to action that says, join our team of volunteers. And I thought, well, and this is like late at night too. I thought this could either be like the best cocktail party story ever one day,
Yeah.
or it could be something that's totally life changing. And so, like my whole life has been, I jumped at the chance without even thinking about it. And I applied, and it was volunteering. So you got accepted right away. And they
Okay.
sent you a link of where to upload your videos, and they gave you a video on what to do. And so I went out to interview people. And the first person I interviewed ended up being like a balloon artist, but they had such an amazing response. And then that got edited and it got posted. And I remember seeing a comment on the video of someone saying, I wasn't planning to be here tomorrow. And then I saw this and I think I'm going to stay. And that just blew the whole world open for me in terms of interviewing humanity and what the direct result can be on someone who watches something that's truly moving or resonates with them. And so after that really amazing interview, my camera broke, my phone broke. And so I wasn't able to go back out right away. So I start working on Discord and helping their community of interviewers and, how to fix their camera, how to, do this or that, and just problem solving. And I get an email from the CEO founder, and he says, we need to have a meeting. And so I was so scared. And then I get to this meeting and I'm thinking I'm in trouble for helping or whatever. And he says, no, he goes, no, 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 I'm not trying to, tell you that you're in trouble. I'm trying to hire you because who the hell are you? You come into my community, you just start pushing people around, not pushing people, but leading people and telling them what to do and fixing their problems. He's like, who are you? And
Right.
so that was how I got hired, was me just, helping people and taking initiative and without even being asked or told or
Yeah.
yeah. So that was how I got in. I started as the community manager on that Discord platform, and then that became me training the content creators with videos and classes. And then I became the managing director. So over time, like this is like over 6 months, like it happened really
Oh,
fast.
wow.
But I was doing so much, and I was hosting their podcast too. So the Are You Happy podcast, which is still there, it still exists. It
Okay.
hasn't been continued since I stopped recording in 2024, I believe. And so it
Mm,
still exists. And then there's a bunch of amazing interviews there. And so while I'm doing their podcast, I'm leading all of these people and then traveling as well. And I don't even know when I started traveling outside of the city and going further and further and then getting sent to both East and West Coast, but it all just kind of organically happened and then it just never stopped for 4 years.
wow. You mentioned that you started this around 2020.
Hmm.
Uh, In that 4-year period of time, the world changed drastically. How did that affect your movement, your travel, your interviews, your
Hmm.
opportunity, all that kind of stuff?
Surprisingly, it it affected only in the sense of like what kind of stories were being told,
Okay.
because it quickly moved from everyday happiness to um, things that were more profound or deep and people taking stock of their lives or who they
Oh,
lost. And
wow.
it became very much different. But,
Yeah.
you know, mask mandates were a thing and definitely abided by those. And when we would interview people, we'd have to have them take their mask down, but then we'd
Right.
be a distance away. So it wasn't like super close up.
Sure.
So there are a lot of things like that changed, but for the most part, I think more so the messages changed and people became a little bit more thoughtful of who was in their lives and what they really meant.
Wow. That's amazing because it went in so many different directions for many people.
Hmm.
Uh, for you to be able to capture the ones who were really taking stock of what meant and was important for them.
Yeah, I think
That's
that happened well, it happened all over the world, but I remember seeing a series on Netflix. It was like a international film festival that was certain directors and other people in media that made their own films at home,
yeah.
and then they just put on this festival on Netflix. And I thought that was the coolest thing because even while people are, closed off in their homes and apartments, they're still able to create art and express how they're feeling. So that was interesting to see that happen during COVID.
Yeah. Very cool. Very cool. Coming to the tail end of that journey of working with that company and that project, what is the next thing that you start stepping into for yourself?
Well, the next thing I stepped into was my bedroom. I had severe burnout, and for I want to say about 3 months or so, I did absolutely nothing and I talked to no one and I just wanted nothing to do with anything. I was so exhausted. And I guess like the way that the project ended for me, it was not how I wanted it to end, I guess. It was just very exhausting. And so yeah, I was in my room for a couple months and then eventually I said, okay, I have to do something. And so then I went back into the corporate world because I thought, oh, you know what? Health insurance is pretty cool. I really need that. So I went to work as a claims adjuster for a major insurance carrier. And I did that for a year. And the whole time I did no creative work. I take that back. I did a little bit of podcasting, but not as much as I would normally. And I think that when I first began like that burnout period, I just wanted nothing to do with anything creative. And it was an odd period for me because I've always been creative. So it
Yeah,
was
yeah,
very odd to do none of it. And also not wanting to do it at all either, because it was reminding me of what had just happened and the burnout that just happened. And
yeah.
so during that time period, though, as a claims adjuster, I started getting really stressed out and my face was tingling and I was having nightmares about work and then having to go to work was a nightmare. So it was horrible. And then
Wow.
eventually I quit. And I remember um, waking up and thinking that, I'd had such an extraordinary life up to that point, and I would be incredibly angry at myself if I died at my desk. You know, it was just, I would be
Yeah.
so pissed. And
Yeah.
so I was like, I need to get back to doing what I've always done. I need to get back to that true part of me, right? And so I had quit. I liquidated my 401 and I'm like, okay, let's get back to the company and let's do this. And said that was like on Indigenous Peoples Day, October 13th of all days to do
Oh,
it.
wow.
Yeah, yeah. And so I just I started back on my company and never stopped. I had originally created Humanity 2.0, I think in 2024-ish, but I didn't work on it consistently. So that
Okay.
was my segue from Are You Happy was Humanity 2.0. So I know that's a really long walkabout to answer your question, but
No, that's
um
right.
the whole premise with Humanity 2.0 came from the fact that I had thousands of hours of unused footage that was unused simply because it wasn't about happiness. But there are these like key moments of humanity that you just cannot help but see. And they're so important that I thought it's a crime against humanity for them not to be seen. And so
Right.
I'm like, okay, I need to jump into this video series. And then I was like, oh, podcast. I've been podcasting since 2012. I started with my own show. So I thought, oh, this is natural. Let me just throw that in there. And then, like, it's kind of hard to go between working on your podcast and the video series. So the podcast kind of became like the front for some time. And so I'm barely starting to get back to doing, video edits as well for that series. So it's a lot of work. And when I was at Are You Happy, I had a team. I had two editors, I had an assistant, I had an intern. It was
Right.
wonderful. And now it's just me, it literally is just me until I get a staff. But yeah, that was what I did next was Humanity 2.0, and that's what I'm still doing.
Cool. If we can, let's talk about the burnout period for just a moment, because I think it'll be highly valuable for the audience, especially from the perspective of what we discussed very early in the conversation of being an empath
Hmm.
and absorbing other people's energy and different things like that you come in contact with. Um, at what point in that journey did you start to realize that you were about to burn out? That was starting to affect you physically, emotionally, mentally, all those types of things.
It was when the level of output that I was putting out wasn't matching what I was receiving when it came to income
Okay.
and like acknowledgement, right?
Yeah.
Because I was sacrificing a lot for many years, and then eventually my income started getting reduced, and it had nothing to do with me. It was about client retention, and I thought, well, that's not my problem. Like
Right.
I at a certain point, and I've never discussed this on any show before, so I'm trying to be very careful on how I word this. But
Sure.
at a certain point, you have to advocate for yourself, and when you've done it for so many years and you put everything that you have into everything that you do, you have to look at the big picture and understand that you're worth more and you're valuable and you should value yourself more.
Yeah.
And so yeah, at that point things were not scaled appropriately, and I was like, okay, I'm not appreciated as much, and I'm also losing massive income. Like I was able to pay all of my bills on this one contract, which is
Yeah.
another thing. As a freelancer, you never have just one contract, but I loved these people so much that I was like, okay, other contracts to the side, I'll do this one prior, mainly. And yeah, so at that point I had to leave, and I let them know that I took some time off, and then when I came back they were like, well, we're pivoting, and I'm like, okay, that's fine. I'm good with that. So that's how we parted ways.
Wow. That's amazing. It's so disheartening
Mm-hmm.
when I hear stories like that because it's so prevalent in the creative world
Mm-hmm.
that it's almost ridiculous.
Oh
Um,
yeah.
Especially for someone who's an empath, who has a servant's heart to begin with, who's willing to give more literally than what they're making in income. And the company decides to reduce the income because of for reasons that are not yours, but are literally something else within the system of the company, not that's not moving it forward in a better and productive way. And I think that's another highlight moment for the audience in terms of understanding your value and making sure that it's always being compensated and respected as well.
Hmm.
Because, and I see this all the time because I'll get emails from Indeed just because at one point in time I thought, I'm going to throw up my hands and quit trying to be a freelance, quit trying to run my own company. I'll just go work for
Right.
somebody else and get a paycheck. But I still get those emails. I'll see an email come through with a position for a graphic designer that's offering $20 an hour for a
Hmm.
graphic designer. I'm thinking in my head, I'm like, how in the world can you even offer that? Like
Yeah.
$20 an hour for
Especially to somebody with experience. Yeah.
it, or even I would hope they would, and this is not the case, but I would hope they would start to label it as a junior coming
Hmm.
just out of college. Okay,
Right.
that's a little bit more understandable for that rate of pay.
Sure.
Um,
Or an
but
intern. Yeah.
right, exactly.
Yeah.
But even just even from the creative side of things, if you have
Yeah.
2 to 3 years experience, $20 an hour is not appropriate,
Yeah.
uh,
I mean, it
for
shouldn't be appropriate across the board because the cost of living is far greater than that. So all
yeah.
jobs should definitely raise. And if you can't afford to pay the people, then
You
yeah.
should yeah, you shouldn't be trying to work in that field.
Oh yeah. I saw it as well. I mean, there were times where we were expected to pay freelancers a certain rate and I was like, that is ridiculously low, but at the time I didn't control what we paid. I could only relay the information, but yeah, I was always surprised to see like who it was that took on these contracts because sometimes the pay was just ridiculously low and having to put yourself outside in the elements for hours upon end and
Yeah.
then getting paid like $120 for a day or getting paid $20 a video, it was absurd and just it was terrible.
Yeah, $20 for a video is ridiculous. There's way too much creativity there, way too much process there, way too much IP associated with that for $20. Like,
Yeah. I
that's
mean, granted, it was
insane.
like raw video, but still, like you're still, like I said, you're braving the elements and you're going outside and having to deal with strangers. And like I
Yes.
never thought about it, but technically your safety is at risk every single person that you interact with.
Yes, absolutely. Absolutely. It always amazes me in this world, even today, April 7th, that creativity is still looked at as not a valuable asset for
Mm,
so many people. It's looked at as, oh, this is just something easy. If you can do it, then, we can pay you this little amount and we can make our money off of it. Um, and I think that's where a lot of times that creatives get tripped up is thinking that, okay, I need to just get the jobs coming in so that I can make the money starting off. But after a while, excuse me, after a while, you start to realize that you're caught in that position.
hmm.
And it's hard to break out of that base level amount that you started just because you needed to generate some income. But to have that in your head of always thinking, okay, a year in, I got to start raising my prices. Year and a half in, I need to start looking at raising my prices again. Year two, definitely raise prices. Because if you don't, eventually your value still stays at what you were at, what you started at, just because
Hmm.
you're trying to get some clients and money. And the future clients hear that first year's price point and they're like, oh, wow, either this is going to be super cheap and I'm just going to get it as a super deal and going to continue on in that fashion, or I'm going to look at it and be like, why is this person charging so little? Am I not getting any value here? There's always that seesaw that takes place. But I think if creatives can recognize their value and at least always continue to see what they've done and increase the value in their head of what they're worth, I think that it would start to level out the industry a little bit
Mm,
more for everybody to be getting paid at a steady rate, a rate that was coordinated with the cost of living a little bit more closely. And also, too, it would create more of an appreciation
hmm.
for it. A lot of times, the people that are appreciating art at its highest level are the people who have extensive incomes. And, you know,
Yeah.
it doesn't always trickle down to all of the truly creative people who are out there who just haven't found that avenue to get the acknowledgement of their gifts. With what you've been doing with the podcast and also realizing that you hit that burnout period of not being valued, doing too much, giving too much, and it not being compensated for, that spark within you that went dormant for that
Hmm.
period of time. Do you remember an exact thought that may have started to brighten that spark a little bit more?
I remember having thoughts about potential stories and seeing situations in front of me and being like, man, that would be an amazing episode, or man, that would make an amazing video. So just like little
Yeah.
baby sparks like that. My mother died during that same period when I was an adjuster, and I think that my view on life shifted too, and how precious it was, and
Yeah.
how I really wanted to get back into um, interviewing people for their perspective on humanity and sharing that. So yeah, I remember thinking lots of little thoughts about what could become, really good content or really good stories. And yeah, I guess there really was like a bunch of little baby sparks. And then when I finally decided to do it, there was nothing that was going to hold me back for sure.
And then also too, you had a brother that passed
Hmm.
um, during that time. Did your brother pass first, or was your mother first?
Yeah, my brother passed first, and
Okay.
then my mother passed. So she was heartbroken. That I mean, he was the oldest,
Mm,
her oldest, and yeah,
yeah.
she was very much heartbroken. And then she had heart issues, and so I think it was like maybe a little more than a year that she
Okay.
passed after him. And so my sister called me. I think I had not been at that job as a claims adjuster for very long, but she called me and said, it's time. You need to come home now. And I remember I had just gotten onto this brand new team and I didn't know who to talk to, but I just went upstairs to my office and I just found the closest manager and said, "Hey, my mom died and I don't know what to do." And he just looked at me and said, "You go the hell home and you get the hell out of here and you go home." And I was
Yeah.
like, "Thank you. Okay, bye." And I just got in the car and drove to San Antonio, and it's the longest drive ever. And then, yeah, I met up with my family and we went through the whole process. And I always think that people who pass away, our loved ones, anyone that passes away, they're never gone. Like their energies are still here. And
Yeah.
I always see things that remind me of her. I might cook food and it feels like she's in the kitchen. I
Yeah.
really feel like their spirits are still here. And so I'm just glad that she's not in any pain and that my brother's not in any pain. So that's the most comforting, I think.
Yeah.
But yeah, I think that they are still here with us.
Yeah. They are always. I mean, it's again another native cultural mindset that
Hmm.
everything's connected and it always stays connected. It's just on a different plane of reality and existence. Um, and for a lot of people, they're not able to comprehend that. But I think it's truly something. If you can think of it from that perspective, it can alleviate a lot of that hurt that takes place with losing a loved one. The fact
Right.
that you're still connected in a way, you just can't always physically see them or give them a hug or any of that type of stuff, but their energy is still around, uh,
Yeah,
and
for
it's
sure.
still there.
I feel the same way about pets too, though. I
Yes.
ran into a lady and she was petting my little dog, my little Elizabeth Taylor. She's around here somewhere. She's sleeping. So she was petting her and she's like, "Oh, I lost my little dog." And she's telling me about her little dog. And I thought, or I told her, I was like, their energies are here just like people. And then I also said, the biggest silver lining when losing a pet is knowing that you gave that pet the best years of its life. You gave it the best life it could possibly ever have. And
Yeah,
that means everything.
for sure. For sure. One of the things that we read off with your intro was that you're an amplifier of voices. Moving forward with your podcast and your video series and what you're wanting to do, what is some of the maybe two or three things that you really want to make sure gets amplified with people's voices in the way that you're working right now?
I want for people to remember that we're all human still, and that there are people out there that wish and do good for humanity still, even though we don't see a lot of it. So I think bringing that to the forefront is so important, and just for people to be empathetic to other people and be compassionate first and foremost. I think those are traits that I want to convey our importance, and then remembering that we're all human. I think that if people could hear the stories of others, then that's going to encourage that humanity in them, and it will bring about that humanity 2.0 that we desperately need. Waking up today and looking at the headlines and hearing, our own president say what he said about annihilating an entire civilization, like that was just that you can't even imagine that that's actually real. And so like all day I even recorded like a solo cast episode where I was reading off an article that I wrote on Substack and was just completely taken aback by that, and the fact that humanity isn't outraged at this moment. Like some people are, but not everyone is, and that's a problem. That in
Yeah.
itself is a problem, that we're not all outraged at the fact that someone can even say, "I'm just going to destroy an entire civilization." That's yeah, it's terrible. So if we could recognize that all humans matter and that they're all valuable regardless of where they're located, I think that we'd be a lot better off, and we'd be far more compassionate, and listening to the stories of others might encourage people to listen to each other regardless of where their affiliations lie. And so
Right.
there's a lot to be had from a series like this, I believe, and I hope. I can only hope, and I will continue to do this work in addition to other creative projects. But it's definitely fulfilling to put out those stories and to share those perspectives.
Yeah, it's absolutely needed for sure. I mean, that was the key component of why I decided to start doing it as well. Was the fact number one, I needed to start sharing my journey
Mm,
with other creatives in the hopes that they could understand too if they struggle with mental health issues, anxiety, depression, different things like that, suicide attempts, all those things. That if I started sharing my story, that maybe somebody out there can hear it and realize that they're not alone in the creative community, and that, or in general,
hmm
um, that there's somebody that has walked that path and understands it intrinsically. So being able to
um,
have these conversations allows me to connect with those and then also to share their stories as well.
yeah. And that's something that we didn't really touch on, mental health. And I often wonder about just like the term, suffering with mental illness. I really look at people as survivors of
Hmm.
mental illness. I suffered from depression my entire life. And then I got a bipolar diagnosis in 2002. And that was actually part of what contributed to the job loss in Seattle, was
Okay.
having an episode. And I had these these full on episodes until like 2007. And then after that, things started to kind of like level out. And so I've just always had that cloud of depression here and there that it never leaves you. But I remember like getting diagnosed back in the early 2000s. And at that point, there wasn't a whole lot about bipolar disorder. And
Right.
the doctor, he said, you're never going to be the same. You're never going to be healed from this. You're never going to get better. You're just going to
Mm.
learn how to live with this. And you should never have children too, by the way. That's what he said.
Oh,
Yeah.
geez.
So I was given a whole lot of information, but he was like, him saying you'll never get better. That made me mad because I was I still am. I can be, competitive. I can be, I'm trying to think of the right word, prideful, right?
Hmm.
And do you think like, just if someone says that you are a particular thing, you're like, no, I'm not. I'm whatever I want to be. Like that's
Right.
usually that's usually how I am. And so for a doctor to say you're never going to be okay, you're never going to get better, and I was like, well, I'll do what I want to do.
Yeah.
And but yeah, I've had mental illness my entire life, and that led me to want to write a book about it. And so every now and again I'll work on it, but it's essentially like a collection of stories
Okay.
where other folks with experience, whether it's firsthand or maybe they have a family member, they can contribute a story, and then an artist who has had experience with mental health issues will do the art. To every other story there'll be some kind of art. So a compilation of these stories could help people that are either going through it to say, I'm not alone. It could help someone who has never experienced to understand their perspective. And so it's called Complications and Metamorphosis, metamorphosis being that
Yeah.
change
Yeah.
and just, there's complications. So,
For
yeah, I've
sure.
been working on that forever, and I work on it here and there a little bit, but I know that I need to get it done just because it would be definitely helpful for some people, I think.
Yeah. When I hear stories about doctors like that, it's so frustrating for me because I've dealt with that as well. And every single time I hear that, I'm like, do you not remember the oath that you took when you became that doctor?
Hmm.
Because it literally says in the oath, do no harm. And that doesn't mean physically doing
Hmm.
harm. It means with your words, with the way that you approach your patients, with the way that you're trying to help them, with all your skills and everything that you've studied. It blows my mind. From my perspective, that pisses me off more than something that the president would say flippantly. You know what
Hmm.
I'm saying? Because sometimes people in high positions say stuff flippantly in a way that is just trying to be provocative to get a reaction from
Hmm.
something. But when a doctor says something like that, they're not saying that flippantly. They're literally defeating you from moving forward in a
Hmm.
process that is going to be towards healing rather than being stuck in the
Yeah.
mindset and being stuck in the label that gets put on us. When you first realized and got that diagnosis and realized, okay, now at least I have a label that's put on it that helps me understand why I've been feeling this way for a while. Did it enter your mind as well that you needed to be an advocate for that part of your life where you were an advocate in other parts of your life?
Even before I got the official diagnosis, I had been an advocate since high school. I joined a group that did like a crisis hotline for suicide prevention, and
Mhm.
so I'd always been involved. And when I was very little, I remember this is like the second grade or something. I remember one day crying at school and never stopping because something had happened that had just really like the switch turned on and I just would not stop crying. And so my mom had to come to school and the teacher said, "Why is she crying?" And my mom said, "I don't know." and and she goes, "She's just emotional." And the the teacher said, well, you should really take her to a therapist. And then she didn't because culture, we don't do that. So
Okay.
I grew up with that depression and isolation, isolating myself, like all of those classic symptoms that you would normally see and treat, they
Yeah.
didn't get treated. But somehow, some way, you develop this empathy for other people suffering through the same thing. And so when I got to, my high school years, I wanted to protect others going through the same thing or for them not to feel what I felt because for all ages, going through school, all of the formative ages, I felt completely and utterly alone. And I never wanted other people to feel that.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. Did did you have any instances, whether it was out in Seattle and being homeless, where you thought maybe it'd just be easier if I just exited the
You
world?
know, you would think so. You would think that at times where I'm like wandering through the snow with absolutely no shoes or wandering through a forest because I got lost, and just like really terrible things that happened. No, no, I didn't. I thought that it would be worse to exit after everything that I had went through. That would just that wouldn't be an answer. It would be like letting down myself. And also religion, I think, kind of kept me from doing that.
Okay.
Because if you kill yourself, then you're going to the bad place. And I didn't want to do that. So that kind of kept me, on the straight and narrow. But really, it became a question of, I survived so much. Why would I stop now? It could get better tomorrow.
That's exceptional.
Yeah. I remember even having my life threatened by a complete stranger in a very remote place. And even then, instead of, I guess, succumbing to the fear of this other person, I fought back without
Mm,
even understanding where that will to fight back came from. And
yeah.
it saved my life.
Wow. That's an amazing perspective, Vanessa.
Yeah, I
Not
think that
only,
I feel like I've had angels. Like I've
yeah,
been
yeah,
watched over.
yes.
I had this bike accident when I was a kid and I broke nothing, but I felt these arms holding me.
Oh,
And
wow.
I swear, like time slowed down. And I remember thinking and being able to process thoughts and having to wait to get hit by this small truck that was about to hit me. And, and I had all of these like instinctive thoughts to close my eyes so I didn't scratch my eyes. Um, but yeah, I felt these arms and I felt no pain when I got hit, nothing at all. Just so that experience and then just always feeling like someone is watching, someone's there. I remember being super hungry and walking down the streets in Seattle and then reaching in my pocket and money appeared. Or me walking somewhere desolate because I had this episode and I was in a random place and then at one point, I'm sinking because there's like this mud that's bringing me down and this is like a completely abandoned area with no one around and yet somebody appears and helps me get help. Just all of these little
Wow.
moments where yeah, you just don't question that God or whatever your chosen equivalent is. You just there are certain things in your life that I guess help you to understand that there definitely is whatever it is you choose to believe in. It totally exists. God exists for you if that's God or whomever. But
Yeah.
yeah, so many things that have happened that I could never ever deny.
Yeah. Well, and that's the thing also too, from my perspective. Like I believe in those things. I believe that we're all watched over. I believe that we're all connected in ways that not is easily explainable or is will be understandable by people, but we will come across those who understand it explicitly, as I do, and know as soon as it's coming out of your mouth that it's absolute truth. That
Mm,
yes, you are being protected, and you have been protected, and you have more to say in the world, and you have more to share for the world. And early on, I said that you had a servant's heart and that you also had those empathy components within you. But now, as I've heard a little bit more come out, the other thing that I'm seeing is that you're a warrior. You're a warrior of life. You're a warrior for the creative community. And that native culture that you may not know exactly where it comes from within your heritage, but is literally in your DNA,
Mhm.
that as I'm sitting here talking to you today, I can recognize it within you. And I hope the audience can see that as well. And for all of those types of stories that you have that you could share with people, I think you need to start putting those to paper and
Mhm.
finishing that book out with more of your story and more of that information.
Yeah.
Because for me, those are the things that are going to flip things on its head and change people in a way that you may not even know could be possible if you keep sitting on them and not putting them out. So I would encourage you, just start writing about those. Don't
Yeah.
worry about bringing somebody else's story in to
Right. Right.
have content. You've already got it, girl.
I've been told this quite a few times, and I am literally in an Airbnb by myself for an entire week. I have the equipment to do it. I just got a brand new computer so I could do all of my creative works.
Nice.
So I have the environment to do it. So I will definitely get on it for sure.
Sweet. That's it. I'm loaded with chills. If that means anything to you, I'm loaded with chills right now.
Totally does. Totally does. I think you've been like spot on every observation, and I appreciate your insights. I feel like they come from a very authentic place,
Yeah.
and you have like such like a serenity, but you also like have, those experiences behind. So you know exactly what people are talking about when they speak on things.
Yeah. Yeah. Thank you for that. I appreciate it. Yeah. You are set up in the perfect opportunity right now to just get off of this interview and start working on everything that's inside of you. It just needs to come out. Perfect opportunity. I think it's a great place for us to be able to end as well because of your realization of, oh, I think I might be in the spot to start doing this.
Hmm.
And one of the things that I always want to always remind the audience at the end of every one of these episodes is to listen to your heart, but in the same process, be kind to your mind.